So today is Saturday, June 20th, 2015. Today we're having a half day Zazen Kai extended sitting, and we will take a look at the next of our trilogy of koans on Deshan. Last week we looked at Deshan's enlightenment, which was case 28 in the Mumen Quan, or Wu Men Quan, as it should really be known in Chinese. Lung Tan blows out the candle. Deshan, you'll remember, was a noted scholar of the Diamond Sutra and set out to wipe out the Zen devils in the south of China, who he'd heard insisted that there was a teaching beyond words and letters, not based on any particular sutra, through which we can awake to our own mind and realize Buddha, that is, meet the Tathagata. Blasphemy, he exclaimed, and went off to put an end to that. And he fell into the dragon pond of Master Lung Tan. The name means dragon pond, and drowned, gone, entirely gone. And gone, his candle blown out, he himself awoke beyond all words and all letters, beyond his wonderful notes on the Diamond Sutra, and found that he was the diamond itself. After that, Deshan set off to visit other teachers, check them out, and be checked by them, a tradition of Zen in China. Layman Pong did it, as did most of the others we now know about. Zhao Chu famously said when he went off on his practice pilgrimage, meeting the Dharma of the other teachers of his time, if I meet a child of 7 who can teach me, I'll learn from them. If I meet someone of 80 who can learn from me, I'll teach them. This sets the Confucian pattern of respect for elders completely on its head. He was way beyond the conventions of his time, walking the ancient, timeless Buddha way. He did this, by the way, going out and checking himself against others for almost 20 years, from around the age of 60 to 80, before he finally settled down at around 80 and began formally teaching. And he did that till the age of 120. It's quite a model for us to follow, and also to realize the integrity and courage it takes to put oneself and one's understanding before a teacher or teachers, and do it only for the sake of sorting things out and getting one's practice understanding clear, so one can be of benefit to others for real. So here again, just for a review, here's that case number 28 in the Wu Men Quan. Lung Tan blows out the candle. The case goes like this. Deshan went to Lung Tan and questioned him sincerely, far into the night. It grew late, and Lung Tan said, "You had better retire." Deshan made his bows and lifted the blinds to withdraw, but was met by darkness. Turning back, he said, "It's dark outside." Lung Tan lit a candle and handed it to him. As Deshan was about to take it, Lung Tan blew it out. At this, Deshan had sudden realization and made obeisance. "What truth did you discern?" asked Lung Tan. Deshan replied, "From now on, I will not doubt the words of any of the great Zen masters of the world." The next day, Lung Tan took the high seat before his assembly and declared, "Among you monks, there is a brave fellow whose fangs are like swords and whose mouth is like a bowl of blood. Strike him with a stick, and he won't turn his head to look at you. One day he will climb the highest peak and establish his way there." Deshan brought his notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra before the Dharma Hall and held up a torch, saying, "Even though one masters all the profound teachings, it is like placing a single hair in vast space. Even though you have learned all the secrets of the world, it is like throwing a drop of water into a deep ravine." And he burned up all his notes, and making his bows, he took leave of his teacher. And here's its lead up, because Wuman sets this up so that the backstory you really need to know for that case comes after it in the commentary. He faces you right into the case, then he tells you what was going on. And this is it. Before Taishan had left home, his mind was indignant and his tongue sharp. Full of arrogance, he went south to exterminate the doctrine of the special transmission outside the sutras. When he reached the road to Li Chu, he sought to buy refreshments from an old woman at a roadside tea stand. The old woman said, "Venerable monk, what are all those books you are carrying on your back?" Deshan said, "They are my notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra." The old woman said, "I hear. The Diamond Sutra says, past mind cannot be grasped, present mind cannot be grasped, future mind cannot be grasped. Which mind does your reference intend to refresh?" Deshan was dumbfounded and could not answer. That is, for all his learning, for all his knowledge, this old woman had brought him to the very end of all that. And this is where his character shows. He didn't get all huffy. He was a noted, learned monk. No. In front of this old woman, he's brought low, and he simply says, let me read you what the commentary says. "Unable to die the great death." This is not a horrible death. There's nothing to be afraid of. The great death is the step beyond all the stuff you're carrying on your back, like Deshan. To let it all go. To be so present that there's no one present. There's just a candle flickering on the altar. There's just the sound of the fan. It's just the sensation of your body being there. Oh, great death is not such a bad thing. Anyway, he could, unable to die the great death under the old woman's words, he asked, "Is there a Zen master nearby?" The old woman said, "Master Lungtan lives about a half a mile from here." One senses that this old woman probably visited Master Lungtan a number of times, and she knew very well what she was up to and what she was talking about. Arriving at Lungtan's monastery, Taishan was utterly defeated. His earlier words certainly did not match his later ones. As for Lungtan, he seemed to have lost all sense of shame in his compassion for his son. Finding a bit of a live coal in the other, he took up muddy water and drenched him, destroying everything at once. Looking at the matter calmly, you can see it was all a farce. A wonderful Zen language. Language in itself isn't rosy, isn't lavish. It's quite colloquial, down to earth, and it keeps us from being attached in great reverence to these outstanding figures of deep Buddha mind. It keeps our feet solidly on the path of our own practice. I think it's just wonderful language. Now, after that, in his pilgrimage, after that wonderful experience, dying the great death at Lungtan's, when the candle was blown out and everything was in darkness, and then even that was taken away, Deshan comes to Kuei-shan's temple and hears today's case and what happened there. This is actually case number 4 in the Hekigan-roku, Blue Cliff Record, Pian-lu in Chinese, Hekigan-roku, Japanese, and it's Deshan, his name in Japanese would be Toksan, carries his bundle. So, in last week's koan, Deshan carried his pack of books and knowledge and learning and notes and commentaries up on his back. He carried it for hundreds of miles, storming down to South China to give what for to those Zen devils who said you didn't have to go through all the stages, you could awake to your own nature just as you were, which of course is what Shakyamuni Buddha said upon his great, deep, most deep realization, wonder of wonders, all beings are Buddhas already fully endowed with wisdom and compassion. It's only their delusions that prevent them from attesting to it. So Zen may not be actually so revolutionary at all. It's right there in the Buddhist statement. So Deshan now has had this great awakening experience. He's burned up all his notes. He says, realization of your own mind is so far beyond all the knowledge you can learn that it's like throwing drops of water in a great ravine. And he now sets off carrying his bundle. Before he was carrying a pack, now he's carrying his monk's bundle. And he's visiting another teacher, and that teacher is Shan. So, when Teishan came to Shan's, very similar names, but in Japanese it's easier. Teishan would be Toksan, and Shan would be Isan. When Teishan came to Shan's temple, he carried his pilgrim's bundle with him into the Buddha hall, where he crossed from east to west and from west to east. Shan sat quietly, doing zazen. Looking around, Deshan said, nothing, nothing, and went out. Shuedo in Japanese is Secho, is the compiler of the Hekigan-roku, and he comments on these cases that he himself has put together as his teaching method. He comments hundreds of years later, completely exposed. Deshan got to the monastery gate, but then said to himself, I shouldn't be so crude. So he re-entered the hall in the proper manner for the meeting. As Shan sat there, still, Deshan, holding up his kneeling cloth, said, Master. Shan made as if to take up his ceremonial whisk, whereupon Deshan shouted, Cuts! And left with a sweep of his sleeves. Shuedo, that is Secho in Japanese, comments, completely exposed. Deshan, turning his back on the hall, put on his straw sandals and departed. That evening, Shan asked the head monk, Where is that newcomer? The head monk said, When he went out, he turned his back on the Buddha hall, put on his straw sandals, and departed. Shan said, Hereafter, that fellow will go to the summit of an isolated peak, establish a hermitage, and scold the Buddhas and abuse the patriarchs. Shuedo, compiled, put this case in the Blue Cliff Record, comments, again, this is hundreds of years later when he was doing that, but his commentary is part of our case, adding frost to snow. Hekigan-roku is the second formal book of koans we examine in our curriculum. That is, the first formal book is Wumen Koan, which comes after the introductory koans, which come after the first gate koans. Hekigan-roku is a deeply poetic text, so much so that the printing blocks were burned by a noted teacher concerned that people were getting too hooked on its literary merits. It was later restored from surviving manuscripts. Dogen himself was said to have been so impressed with it that he copied the whole text out that he saw in a monastery in China in one night, just before getting on the boat in the morning to return to Japan. So the text in Japan is also sometimes known in Soto circles as one-night Hekigan. Given this, why Soto teachers, who all trace themselves to Dogen, typically do not use koans in their teaching seems a real loss. Hekigan-roku means literally Blue Cliff Record. Its Chinese would be Pian Lu. Here is its story, and this is commentary from his introduction to the Hekigan-roku by Yamada Roshi. Yamada Roshi, of course, is creator of Sambo Kyoden, now known as Sambo, which is, he was the teacher after, Yasutani Roshi was the teacher of Yamada Roshi. You can read about his deep enlightenment experiences, the first in the three pillars of Zen. He was a Japanese hospital administrator, a businessman, his whole life, and had a very profound awakening, and was a very interesting teacher. Started or continued the lay line of Yasutani Roshi. Aitken Roshi studied with first Yasutani Roshi, then Yamada Roshi. So Yamada lies behind our line and this Zendo. We have two lines here. One is through Kaplo Roshi, the other is through Aitken Roshi. We work with both lines, though our approach to koans tends to be that of Aitken Roshi. So, Yamada Roshi writes, the Hekigan Roku or Hekigan Shu contains 100 koans collected by Master Secho, that's Shui Do in Chinese. After each case, he added a verse. Originally, the verse in Buddhist literature is something that praises the Buddhist virtues. It's a gata, that's the traditional word, and presents Buddhist doctrines in poetical form. In Zen, the gata verse is added as a poetical representation of the main point of the main case. Master Shui Do was born in 980 during the reign of Emperor Tai of the Sung dynasty and died at the age of 72 in 1052 in the era of Emperor Jin of the same dynasty. Master Shui Do is said to have edited the koans and verses of the Hekigan Roku when he was 42 or 43 years old. He belonged to the first generation after Master Yun Men. Master Yun Men had great literary talent, and so did his descendant, Master Shui Do. It is said that upon beginning, as well as after finishing each verse, Master Shui Do prostrated himself and burned incense before a Buddha statue. So let me just take a minute to mention, just because Zen is iconoclastic doesn't mean it's deeply reverential. And just because the language of Zen is so colloquial doesn't mean it's not deeply devotional. So to go on, his poetical creation is nothing but a manifestation of his great faith in the way. Indeed, they are wonderful poems. In fact, I consider, this is Yamada speaking, the verses of the Hekigan Roku to be among the greatest literary achievements of human beings. There have been many great poets and almost an infinite number of excellent poems in history. For example, we're all familiar with Goethe's Faust or Dante's Divine Comedy. Their works are lengthy, whereas Secho, or Shui Do in Chinese, verses are extremely brief and meager in quantity. Still, I believe these verses are second to none in quality, even in comparison with those great works. Later, Master Huan Wu, Engo in Japanese, who was born in 1063, about 10 years after the death of Master Shui Do, and another outstanding figure in Zen, added the instructions to the 100 koans written down by Master Shui Do. An instruction is a small paragraph put immediately before the main case to explain the very essence of Zen, what Zen is really about in relation to the following koan. Of course, this essence cannot actually be expressed in words. However, without words, there would be scarcely any way to help us come to an understanding. Therefore, words are used to explain the living core of Zen. In the main case, this core is expressed through a fact, using an actual example. In our Doksan room, however, we take up only the main cases of the Hekigan Roku, skipping both instructions and verses. As a matter of fact, it is very important to thoroughly understand, though, the instructions of the Hekigan Roku. Otherwise, we might simply glide along the surface of the koans, like sliding on ice, without truly grasping their depth. Let me interpolate or pause here for a minute too. That's totally true. One could go through the entire koan curriculum, and if the teacher wasn't careful to point you and keep you facing into the depths of the koans, one could get into various ruts and performance habits and go through the curriculum without really facing into the depths of one's own nature. And that's part of a teacher's responsibility to help us do that very thing. So Yamada goes on. So I want you practitioners to bear well in mind that these instructions are highly important since they reveal the core of the following main cases. However, There are 21 cases in the Hekigan-roku which have no instructions, and this imbalance is due to the fact that the original manuscript was once, as I've mentioned, thrown into a fire. Dai Soko, that's his Japanese name, the Dharma successor of Master Guan Wu, or in Japanese again, that would be Engo, thought that the book, the Hekigan-roku, could invite conceptualization and make one adhere to words and thoughts. In fact, if you think there's something in the written words, it's a grave mistake. So Dai Soko collected the original manuscript papers and burned them. A momentous decision indeed. But later, people thought it would be truly a pity to lose such an excellent book and wanted to republish it. So a lay disciple gathered the remaining copies from various quarters, putting them all together, but the scattered manuscript was never completely recompiled. And that's why the version that we have contains some cases without any instructions. Then, in addition to the instructions, Master Engo, that is Guan Wu in Chinese, wrote rather extensive commentaries which expound on the main case. And then he furthermore added sharp and biting comments, capping phrases to each phrase or sentence in the main case. He did the same for the verses by Master Zendo, giving short comments on each phrase of the verse and lengthy commentaries on the whole verse. Most probably he did this while delivering teishos on the cases and verses. So all these together form the Hekigan-roku. The commentaries are quite interesting, but they are usually omitted in the teisho. Comments are worthy of consideration, but they are traditionally not handled as such in the teisho. Therefore, I too, says Yamada, will confine my teisho to the instruction, main case, and verse. Final point is Master Yuan Wu lived in a temple on Mount Kasan. Most probably was nothing more than a large form hermitage. It was also called Hekigan-in. In one of its rooms, there was said to have been a framed calligraphy by the master who was the founder of the temple. It is said that the name Hekigan-roku, roku is case or collection, something like that, came from the word Hekigan, blue cliff, which was simply in this calligraphy. And so the master, Guan Wu, called it the Blue Cliff Record because of the calligraphy done by the founder of his little temple that was hanging on the wall, probably in the Doksan room. So now back to the case. Number 4 in Hekigan-roku, Toksan carries his bundles. First, we need, like Zendo, to see through Deshan, grasp hold and at once what's up with him. In short, how do we see Deshan? Whenever he comes in, he doesn't do the formal ritual, which you're supposed to do upon entering a temple. He just marches right in to where the teacher is doing zazen in the hall and looks around and says, nothing, nothing. And Master Zendo says, completely exposed. So the first question is, how do we see Deshan? Carrying his bundle means carrying his monk's ritual gear. When entering the monastery, there is a prescribed ritual. You speak with the attendant monk. You ask for an interview with the teacher. You put on your formal robes, put down your bowing cloth, make your bows. Deshan just marches in. What's up? Is he gloriously free? Beyond it all? Or what? What would you say? What does Kuei-shan say? The teacher sits there doing zazen. How does he say it? For we also will need to see Kuei-shan and where he's at. The cases of Hekigan-roku are interactive, not so direct as the cases of Wumenguan. There's a dance going on. Koan interchanges are a lot like jazz, we might say. One plays one series of notes, the other protagonist takes off from there, then it's back to the first, and so on. Lots of brilliant, inspired interchanges, one playing off the other. So, Is Quayshan just sitting there waiting for something to happen, untouched, unmoved, unresponsive? Or what? At the second meeting, he reaches down and raises his whisk. Why? And Teisho, what's he doing? Why is he doing what he's doing? Is he presenting something valuable in all this? Really, what would you say? And how about Zendo, compiler of the Hekigan Roku? Why does he say completely exposed? What does he see in this that's so clear? And why is it so immediately clear? What is he calling to our attention by saying this twice? In the future, etc. I don't know if you remember, so let's take a look at that again. In the case, let's see if we can get back to it. In the future, right? Quayshan said, hereafter that fellow will go to the summit, that is, hereafter is in the future, that fellow will go to the summit of an isolated peak, establish a hermitage, and scold the Buddhas and abuse the patriarchs. And Zendo comments, adding frost to snow. So, Zen language, as I said, can be quite colloquial and down to earth. Zen language is not rosy language, nothing that will allow us to mentally stick, even with reverence, to the great elders of our past, the men and women, like that old tea selling lady. So Quayshan could actually here be saying words of great praise, prophesying as to what this lively monk is going to achieve with that spirit and that insight of his. Is that it? The koan will ask us to resolve this. Is that what's going on? Finally, why did Zendo include this little story in his important koan collection? This was the great work of his life, we might say, to put this all together and to pass it on to all future practitioners. It was a presentation of his own very lofty way of teaching. So why did he put this case in here? What's the point he's putting before us is something that, when we work on the koan, we'll need to resolve. What does this have to do with, one, the actualities of our own practice, and two, how does it help others, which of course is the whole point of our practice? How does it help others? What is the insight or wisdom which is expressing itself as compassionate action, which means selfless action, being revealed by this koan case? Here's an important koan in the Wumen koan that may offer us a clue. Wumen koan, of course, is gateless barrier. Why? Gateless gate. Why? Zen's point is the barrier we think we're facing. It's really been open from the very beginning. The great irony of human life. We feel so trapped, so burdened, so separate and alone. And yet, the barrier, it's been taken down long ago. In fact, there's never been a barrier. We just don't know it. I don't know if you remember some of the cartoons of your childhood. It was a very surreal Looney Tune cartoon. Really surreal. At one point, somebody, I forget who, it's Daffy Duck or somebody, wandering through this really crazy kind of landscape and world. One of the things that I remember really struck me as a child. One of the characters, kind of elongated and strange, has got like a window of a prison, just the bars that would be on the little, maybe back wall of a jail cell out west. Those kind of bars set in the wall. Little rectangle, and he's holding on to it, and he's screaming, grasping these bars. He's walking around, kind of shaking it like this, going, "Let me out! Let me out!" Gateless gate. We ourselves put up the barrier. We ourselves feel we can't pass through it. We ourselves feel separate and alone. The whole point of Zen practice, summed up, gateless gate. It feels like that, but what if that's not so? How free might we actually be? We just don't know it. Or as the Buddha himself said, wonder of wonders, from the very beginning all beings are Buddha. Hakuin says it too. From the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. Why don't we know it? How we suffer from lack of knowing who and what we actually are. Such a deep, tragic irony behind all the violence that human beings do to one another. Terribly pitiful, the events that happen in the world around us. Let me out, let me out. How did that ever happen? We don't know. But we can walk right through. This is what practice, ongoing, continuous practice, can help us do. So, case 46, Wu Men Quan, gateless barrier. Xishuang, step forward from the top of the pole. And the case goes like this. Master Xishuang said, how do you step forward from the top of a 100-foot pole? An eminent master of former times said, you who sit on the top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it is not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the worlds of the 10 directions are your total body. Then Wu Men's commentary. Stepping forward, turning back. Is there anything to reject as ignoble or unworthy? Be that as it may, how do you proceed onward from the top of a 100-foot pole? Sa! Wu Men's verse. He darkened the eye in his forehead and clung to the mark on the scale. Throw away body and discard life, and the blind one leads the blind. Not going to comment on this koan specifically. Just let it sink in. Stepping forward from the top of a 100-foot pole. There's some wonderful points in here and wonderful points in the commentary and the verse. The eminent master of former times, I'm sorry, I meant to bring up Robert Aitken's Wu Men Quan and read one page from it, but I can summarize it, though I'm going to be foggy on the names. There was a master well before Wu Men. It was around the year, roughly around 1000 or so AD, further back in the Tang era, who, a noted teacher, and I'm sorry why the name is escaping me, who heard about, might have been a former student of his or another master, or said to be master, sitting alone in a hermitage, and he had a student go and interview him, and he interviewed him, and he was told what to ask, and then to come back and tell this teacher what the response had been. And he said, and he had supposedly had this teacher who was sitting alone now, had a deep, deep realization was the word, from seeing a particular teacher. Maybe this very teacher who's sending the student to check him out. And the student was asked him, so how was it before you saw Master so-and-so? And this person who's sitting there says, nothing special. And then he said, how about after you saw that Master? He said, nothing special. And then he comes back and says to that eminent master of former times, as Wu Men calls him, and the eminent master said in response to that interchange that he had sent his student out to check on this guy, you who sit on the top of 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it's not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the worlds of the 10 directions are your total body. So, the point is you can't stay at the top of the 100-foot pole. It may have taken a lot of work, years of practice, much effort, courage, sweat, and tears to get all the way up there to the top of that pole. But if you really mean to be of use and help others, you have to come back down. And to do that, you have to step off the pole. How do you step off? Go beyond the very top of the pole of practice. How do you go beyond the peak of your own effort and truly enter the way? Why is that lonely peak so high up? What is the top of the pole? What's it like up there? What do you see from up there? Well, just sitting up there laughing at Buddhas and patriarchs, those working hard to teach, resolve it? As good as that is? How do you help others up the peak? How do you help others get up their own mountain, which in Zen is often called a mountain of swords? That is, a mountain of difficult, sheer practice with nothing to cling to. Swords are sharp. It's a mountain of swords. How can you hold on to the edge of the sword? You'll hurt yourself. Zen practice is said to be like climbing a mountain of swords. There's nothing to hold to. You just have to keep going up with nothing to cling to. No place you can rest. All those swords are sharp. What an incredible image. As an aside, back in the 60s in college, I had a friend who, if they saw someone giggling in the snack bar, this being the 60s, would call out to them, "Come down, come down!" Being up there giggling away, having a high old time, might be okay, but it can't yet function. What does maturity in practice mean? What does it mean to teach? How does it relate to our own practice, our own view now? What is going down? What is helping others? All of these things are examined as we explore this koan. Our entire practice is exposed, completely exposed by this koan. Whatever you can say about Deshan at this point in his practice realization, you're likely to be wrong. Whatever you can say about it, you're likely to be exposed, completely exposed. Has he got it or not? Or what? Practice sincerely, and you too will know. It's the only way. Practice sincerely. It's the only way to get to the top of the pole. Practice sincerely. It's the only way to step beyond the top of the pole. Next time, we'll look at the final koan, what is actually a trilogy of koans on Deshan, this same very interesting teacher. We'll see him next as an old, mature, and very refined teacher. Quite a change. When he started out, he was quite the hothead, going off to wipe out, to exterminate the Zen devils in the south, who were making a travesty of the Buddha's teachings, is how he saw it. He was very learned, very accomplished intellectually, was really, what would be the word, horrified by the the way these Zen devils in the South, that is coming out of the teaching of the sixth patriarch, said there is a way to realize the mind itself, whether you're literate or illiterate. As we said the last time, the sixth patriarch was supposedly illiterate. That may not be true, but the point the Zen tradition offers is it wouldn't have mattered. Go back to the words of the Buddha, wonder of wonders. All beings are Buddhas, fully endowed with wisdom and virtue. Only their delusions prevent them from realizing this. Zen takes its stand right there. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning, as we talked about last time. It can help us to finally accept that truth. But Deshan was ripe. He'd come to the very top of the pole of where learning could bring him. And the old woman could knock him right off the pole. Which mind are you going to refresh, Venerable Sir? And he has his profound experience through Lungtong's compassion and skill. And then he goes off to Shan. What is going on there? Does he have it or not? So when we get to that koan in our curriculum, we'll have to decide. So this time, last time he carried his pack on his back, lugging it hundreds of miles, pack of his commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. Sure, it now he had on his back, it contained all the world, all he or the world would ever need in the way of wisdom. That's how sure he was. But at the end of that first koan, he burned all his precious notes, saying that all that knowledge, as Bob Dylan said, all that pointless, useless knowledge was just like so many drops of water in a great ravine. That enlightenment, realization of his own mind, our own mind, is way, way beyond even all the wisest words. He saw that. And it changed him. In today's koan, having gotten rid of all his notes, all his knowledge, he carries his sacred monk's bundle for hundreds of miles, arriving at Shan's monastery. Yet, having arrived there, he hardly seems able to know what to do with his bundle, or how to use it, or anything. Again, has it all been in vain? Our next koan will take us back to the Wumen koan, gateless gate. There we'll see Deshan again. This time he's arrived. As Lungtong says so, you've arrived. This time he's arrived, but now he's at his own temple. He's arrived. He's teaching at his own temple. He is now the teacher. And in that koan, we'll see him carefully carrying not a pack of learning, not a monk's bundle, but simply carrying very carefully his lunch bowls, coming quietly forward when the noon bell is rung that announces the midday meal. What kind of teaching could be in that? We shall see.